तं सहगना रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनासहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगना ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरकिशोर नमः हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगतपते गोपेशा गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिय वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 Hare. Okay, so we'll just once again go to the translation of the previous verse, 15th verse.
Should I ask the question now or later?
Okay. No, but if other devotees also will benefit, no?
So,
So 15th verse. My dear Priyavrat, according to our association with different modes of material nature, the Supreme Personality of Godhead gives us our specific bodies and the happiness and distress we achieve. One must therefore remain situated as he is and be conducted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, exactly as a blind man is led by a person who has eyes with which to see. Okay, so I'll just read Vishnu Thakur's commentary on the verse. So he says, we are dependent even in enjoying the results of karma. O Priyavrat, we receive happiness and distress as given by the Lord. But this is not saying fault in the Lord. So we receive happiness and distress as given by the Lord, but it says the same fault is not in the Lord, but he also gets happiness and distress. It arises from our attachment. It arises from our attachment to actions connected to the gunas. Among all oxen which are equal as among all oxen which are equal as far as common characteristics are concerned, according to the amount of good or bad actions, their master gives them rice with milk and ghee and puts them in the best stable, or gives them rough chickpeas and dal, or grass and corn. Or he may put them outside in the mud and sun without food, beat them and scold them, and feed them straw and leaves. So, in accordance to the work that the ox do or the bulls do, then different treatment is given. That's what it is. In what manner should we accept these results? Whatever the master gives as good or bad result, only according to our good and bad qualities, we should accept. What fault is there in the master? We should accept this with faith. One should see this as a good quality in the life. An example is given. Will the blind will the will the blind man scold the man with vision who while leading him on the path takes him on the path full of burning sun instead of on the shady path because he sees thorns on the shady path. The man with sight is the well wisher of the blind man. The person with faith will praise him. So that's what he said. So ultimately, whatever the Lord does is for the benefit of the person. So one should have faith. So just like the person with vision, he leads the blind man, and the blind man has faith. So you can ask your question now, maybe before you go. So, so therefore, whatever the Lord does is for the best benefit of the jiva, and basically whatever the Lord gives is according to the actions of the jiva. Correct. So two examples is one is of the ox. If the ox works very nicely, the farmer gives him good treatment. Otherwise, bad treatment. And similarly, the person with eyes, he's taking the blind man, and whatever he does is for the good of the blind. So similarly, whatever the Lord is doing in each of our lives is perfect. It's for our well-being. So we need to have faith. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Thank you very much. In the last session, you very nicely explained that when we neglect sadhana, then we enter into problems, and then a lot of time goes when we neglect more sadhana, and we really good
Vicious
question.
cycle.
Yeah, vicious circle. So one question was really that purport was there where Srila Prabhupada says the dilemma of Priyavrata, and then Prabhupada says to solve that is Yukta Vairagya Vala.
Hmm.
And you were explaining how further you need intelligence.
Hmm.
But I could not actually relate this both things, the dilemma, how it will be solved by Yukta Vairagya application in such
Okay.
situations.
So basically, what he's saying is to solve the dilemma requires intelligence.
Mhm.
Hmm. Now, the Yukta Vairagya principle he specifically has mentioned in relation to Priyavrat. So, for Priyavrat, how he has to use his intelligence to solve this dilemma is accept the kingdom in accordance to the principle of Yuktava. That is how Priyavrat should use his intelligence to solve this dilemma. Because Brahma is telling to accept the kingdom. So he has to accept the kingdom. So then, if he accepts the kingdom, his problem is he may get entangled. That is his problem. So therefore, the solution is that he has to accept the kingdom in accordance to the principle of Yukta Vairagya. That means be detached from the kingdom, but at the same time accept it as the plan of the Lord.
Maybe second question was very small. You showed that purport of 1.2.17 last two paragraph. So Prabhupada writes there that hearing is the way to be saved. And you were mentioning really humility, which is also logical, but I couldn't understand why specifically you mentioned this point, really.
See, in that purport, Srila Prabhupada specifically twice he has mentioned what? Yes,
Mercy
grace
of the
of the
Lord.
Lord.
Uh-huh.
So, so now who attracts the grace of the Lord?
And he's humble.
Yeah. So when one is humble, then he is automatically dependent on the grace. One who is proud, he is not dependent. One who is humble, he is dependent. So when he is dependent, then he gets more grace. That is how humility and mercy are directly related. As Srila Prabhupada also quoted from the Bible, only the meek and humble enter into the kingdom of God.
So, in this only, sometimes because we have heard so much humble, in such situations of um, some quarrel with some devotee or some ego tussle or something, I may humble myself. I may tell my mind, okay, ठीक है, bow down. So, and somebody may be actually conscious that if I bow down in this situation, the Lord will be pleased with me and let me accept it and be happy and cheerful with all the devotees, not humble, bow down with a grudge and just going into seclusion.
mm.
So, so how, what, this is better, but then how I will do this.
Okay. So, exhibition of humility cannot be artificial. Otherwise, it will be false humility. Okay. At the same time, one can try to practice genuine humility. So, if in a particular situation, even though mind may say, no, it's not good, retaliate, rebel, do this, do that. But then, if that is what is necessary according to Guru Sadhu Shastra, then as an austerity, one has to accept. So, in the conditioned state, everything is not natural and spontaneous. Right? That's why we are sadhaka. So, sadhana means what? Practice. So, therefore, even though it may not be natural, that is what Krishna is telling in the Bhagavad Gita 17th chapter, 14, 15, 16 verses. He's talking about austerity of the body, austerity of speech, austerity of the mind. So austerity means what? It's not natural, but still understanding the higher principle that this is what is pleasing to Guru and Krishna, then I try to practice it anyways. So then if I practice it, then gradually it may become natural. At the same time, because it is not so natural and inside one may be uncomfortable and mind may be howling, growling, whatever. So then in that situation, it is good to confide with some Vaishnav and then discuss the matter. So then whatever is within comes out. So at least that much one should do. So that there is some relief in expressing oneself to someone. And then one will also get the strength from other Vaishnavas to go through the austerity of trying to be humble for one's ultimately own welfare. So one devotee was giving this example. So just like if maybe we have this experience in school days. So we misbehaved or didn't do homework or whatever. The teacher is angry, and then when the teacher is chastising, of course these days there is no question of beating, but of course previously it used to happen. So then at that time the mind may say, no, 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 no. You tell the teacher why you did not do, give some justification. But then one is afraid that if one says something, gives some justification, one may get more beaten. So then to spare oneself from the more beating, then one keeps the mouth shut and tolerates the beating. A little crude example. So in the same way, if so one knows that if I don't act humbly in this situation, then I may lose the mercy of Guru and Krishna. So therefore, understanding that to attract mercy of Guru and Krishna, I need to act humbly in this situation. So for the higher principle to attract mercy of Guru and Krishna, then even though it is not natural for me to act humbly, I try to act for the higher principle. So just like I think so we can relate to this better. Just like if working in the company and the boss is very unreasonable and he's demanding this, that, so many things. But inside when we're so angry, fellow crazy fellow. Can we tell on his face? No, we keep quiet. Why we'll keep quiet? Ah. So higher principle. Uh, so basically, it is profit loss calculation. So in every situation, so we have to see profit loss calculation. So for us, what's the ultimate profit? Yes, pleasing Guru and Krishna is the ultimate profit. So then, whatever is conducive for that, then one has to act accordingly. Sometimes it may be easy, sometimes it may be natural, sometimes not be natural. But still, as an austerity, one.
And if it I am subduing myself as austerity for pleasing Guru Krishna, then it will be pleasing to me also. But if the purpose is somehow to control, otherwise I'll lose my position and my reputation, then internally I will be feeling not comfortable, not pleased. Am I
Hmm.
correct for you?
Yes, that is true. If it is only done with material motives, then it may not lead to so much spiritual progress. But if one has the right motive, then because one is following the proper principles of pure devotional service, then that will purify us. So, yes, so it is not simply an artificial show of humility for some material motives, just like the outside people may do. I think so. In some previous class, we had given these examples of the air hostesses who behave very nicely. We discussed that, right? So they also behave as if they're so humble and tolerant. Why? Yes. So they have a motive. They have a material motive. Mm. So, so we may also behave like that, but if we are doing it with a material motive, then well, it is better than not doing anything. But if it is done with material motive, it will not lead to so much of purity. But if it's done with the right motive, then it will lead to purity. Why? Because now, if, to give a Shastric reference for this, why? Because anybody knows Shastric reference? Okay, let's try to find. Go to third canto, 16th chapter. Yes, 11th verse. Third canto, 16th chapter, 11th verse. So Lord Narayan is speaking to Yes, to the four commands. Of course, Jay and Vijay are also there, but he's specifically speaking to the four. This is on the other hand, they captivate my heart who are gladdened in hearts, and who their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles respect the Brahmanas even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, it has been observed in many instances in Vedic scriptures that when the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas curse someone in angry mood, the person who is cursed does not take it upon himself to treat the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas in the same way. No, tit for tat. And then Prabhupada is giving examples of Nalkuver and Manigri. So he says that should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One may sometimes be faced with a grievous situation created by Brahmana, but instead of meeting him with a similar mood, one should try to pacify him with a smiling face and mild treatment. Remember this, huh? Some Vaishnava is chastising you, smile. That Vaishnava will say, "Arey, what is it? Kaisa aadmi?" I'm chastising you, smile. But anyway, the mood has to be understood. Why? Because Brahmanas and Vaishnavas should be accepted as earthly representatives of Narayan. And then further down he says, it is specifically said that to pacify the Brahmanas, one's face should be lotus-like. A lotus-like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. That is the important thing. Love and affection. So if there's love and affection, then one will not mind the chastisement. In this respect, the example of the fathers being angry at the son and the sons trying to pacify the father with smiling and truth is very appropriate. But in any case, so the point is that the Lord is pleased by such behavior when one is tolerant and does not retaliate. So the Lord is pleased. He himself is Lord is pleased by it. And of course the Lord himself exhibited such behavior when yes, Bhrigu is passing. Lord showed that tolerance. ठीक है? Okay. Okay, let's continue Brahma's teachings to Priya rites. 16th verse. मुक्तोऽपि तावद् बिभत्या स्वदेहम् आरब्धमश्नन्नभिमानशून्यः यथानुभूतं प्रतियातनिद्रः किं त्वन्यदेहाय गुणान् लभते.
Even if one is liberated, he nevertheless accepts the body he has received according to his past karma. Without misconception, however, he regards his enjoyment and suffering due to that karma, the way an awakened person regards a dream he had while sleeping. He thus remains steadfast and never works to achieve another material body under the influence of three modes of material nature.
So here basically Brahma is explaining the same point. What point is explaining? How one is totally controlled by the Lord. That is there's only one theme that Brahma is speaking. Yes, accept the Lord's plan, everything is under the control of the Lord. That is what is explained. So In the previous verse, he explained that how everyone is under the control of the Lord. Lord gives different bodies according to karma. One has to accept it, behave accordingly. So now here he's saying, okay, now Priyavrat Maharaj may say, but I'm not like ordinary person to suffer my karma. No, I'm liberated soul. So why should things happen according to karma? So then Brahma is saying, Muktopi tavad, even if you are liberated, one still has to accept the body according to karma. That he cannot change. Because now he may be on the liberated platform, but he has already got a body. Correct? He has already got a body according to his past karma. Now he may be on liberated platform. But body is already there. And so if body is already there, then whatever enjoyment, suffering the body is going to give, that is also going to be there. So therefore, he accepts it. He accepts it, but he remains steadfast. Hmm. Um, so therefore, it said, Ashnan Abhimana Shunya. And in the word to word meaning, Prabhupada translates Abhimana Shunya as without erroneous conceptions. That means without wrong conceptions. So, whatever happiness, distress, even the liberated soul is getting, he accepts it, but he accepts it with the right conception, with the right perception. He accepts it. And how does he accept it? Pratiyata nidra kim kintu anya dehaya gunana. So just like a person who has awakened from sleep. So he has seen a dream, now he's awakened. How seriously he takes the dream? Oh, his dream, it's finished. So he doesn't take it very seriously. So that's how a liberated soul, he views the happiness and distress of his body. Hmm. Okay, please read the purport.
The difference between a liberated and conditioned soul is that the conditioned soul is under the concept of bodily life, whereas a liberated person knows that he is not the body but a spirit, different from the body. Priyavrat might have thought that although a conditioned soul is forced to act according to the laws of nature, why should he, who was far advanced in spiritual understanding, accept the same kind of bondage and impediments to spiritual advancement? To answer this doubt, Lord Brahma informed him that even those who are liberated do not resent accepting in the present body the result of their past activities. While sleeping, one dreams many unreal things, but when he awakens, he disregards them and makes progress in factual life. Similarly, a liberated person, one who has completely understood that he is not the body but a spirit soul, disregards past activities performed in ignorance and performs his present activities in such a way that they produce no reactions. This is described in Bhagavad Gita 3.9. Yajnata karmanavanyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. If one performs activities for satisfaction of the Supreme Personality, the Yajna Purush, his work does not produce reactions. Whereas karmis who act for themselves are bound by the reactions of their work. A liberated person therefore does not think about whatever he has ignorantly done in the past. Instead, he acts in such a way that he will not produce another body by future activities. As clearly mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, Mam Chayobhyapyarena Vakti Yogena Sevate Sagunan Samatiyotan Brahman Bhujaya Kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and then thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Regardless of what we have done in our past lives, if we engage ourselves in unalloyed devotional service to the Lord in this life, we will always be situated in the Brahmabhuta, liberated state, free from reaction, and will not be obliged to accept another material body. Tyaktva deham punarjanma na iti mamati. Bhagavad Gita 4.9. After giving up the body, one who has acted in that way does not accept another material body, but instead goes back home, back to God.
Hmm. So, even the one is in the liberated platform, Lord Brahma informed that even those who are liberated do not resent accepting in the present body the results of their past activities. So, based on past activities, one has already got a body. So, therefore, some reactions are going to be there. Can't help it. So, just like yesterday, we were giving the reference of Jad Bharat 5, 13, 24. Somebody read? Translation.
Let me continue. My dear king, O son of Mother Uttara, there were some waves of dissatisfaction in the mind of Jad Bharat due to his
थोड़ा नजदीक रखो थोड़ा जोर से.
due to his being insulted by King Raghunatha, who
So there were
waves of
waves of dissatisfaction. Even though Jad Bharat is totally on the liberated platform, Mahabhagavat, but still there were waves of dissatisfaction.
who made him carry his palanquin. But Jad Bharat neglected this, and his heart again became calm and quiet like a ocean.
Yes, so he had those waves of dissatisfaction, but he neglected. Didn't he? Hmm.
Although King Raghunatha had insulted him, he was a great Paramahansa. Being a Vaishnava, he was naturally kind-hearted, and he therefore told the king about the constitutional position of the soul. He then forgot the insult because King Raghunatha pitifully begged pardon at his lotus feet.
Hmm.
After this, he began to wander all over the earth just as before.
So,
Purpose. In Srimad Bhagavatam 3:25-21, Kapildev describes the symptoms of great personality. Titikshah Kananika Sahidya Saratahini. Saintly person is certainly very tolerant. He is the friend of all living entities, and he does not create enemies within the world. A pure devotee has all the qualities of a sadhu. Jad Bharat is an example of this. Due to the material body, his senses were certainly agitated.
yes, that's the important point. Due to the material body, his senses were definitely agitated. So that is the point here Brahma is making. This body is due to what? Result of my past karma. And if the body is there, that means some influence of three modes is going to be there. And so then some reaction will be there in in the form of some happiness, some distress will be there.
Due to the material body, his senses were certainly agitated when he was insulted by King Ravana. But later, due to the king's humble submission, Jad Bharat excused him. It is the duty of everyone desiring to return to Godhead to become submissive like King Ravana and beg pardon of Vaishnavas one may have offended. Vaishnavas are generally very kind-hearted. Therefore, if one immediately submits himself as a lotus feet of a Vaishnava, one is immediately cleared of offensive reactions.
Okay,
If one does
okay,
not,
keep it now. Okay, so that's the important point there. So as long as material body is there, some reactions are going to be there. So just like we also have the other example of Dhruva Maharaj. He had darshan of the Supreme Lord. He was also on the liberated platform. But still, okay, as a matter of duty, he was trying to avenge the death of his brother. And then he went to kill the Yakshas. But then the mode of passion and ignorance became powerful. And so then the anger became excessive anger. And then he was killing everyone. And so even though he was on the liberated platform, Swayambhu Manu had to come and give him good advice. So if we think we don't require good advice, see this example. Even somebody like Dhruva Maharaj required advice. So that is the nature of the material body. Material body means three modes. And there is always a possibility of that influence of three modes. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada has written in 14th chapter, Bhagavad Gita, 14th chapter, verses 20 to 25, purport. You can see. So there Srila Prabhupada has written that one becomes free from the influence of the modes only when one goes out of this body. Only then one is free from the influence. As long as material body, some influence is going to be there. So therefore, as long as material body is there, one always has to be very alert. Because this body is made up of what? Material elements. Material elements means three gunas. So therefore, till one leaves this material body and goes to the spiritual world, till the last breath one has to be careful. Correct? You found it? You found that sentence? No, that particular sentence you found in the purport. It's almost at the end of the first paragraph of the purport.
Led by the
Ah,
material body, it is
ah,
to be understood that he is under the control of one of the three modes of living.
yes. And then?
When he is actually out of the body,
Ah,
then he is out of the clutches of material
yes. When he is
consciousness.
out of the body, then he is free from the clutches of the universe. Only then he is. But then, what is the difference, as Prabhupada has explained? So the influence of three modes will be there. Some happiness, distress may be there. But what is the difference between conditioned soul and liberated soul? As we see in the case of Jad Bharat, some influence was there, but what? Not like, oh, why did he say that? Why? He just told the. So, some influence was there, but very easily he overcomes that influence. And that's exactly what Prabhupada is writing over here. That is so for the liberated soul, it is all that influence of the modes is just like dream. How seriously one takes the dream? Ah, ho gaya na kya hai? That is the difference. Hmm. But in the conditioned state, when the influence of the modes is there, then it affects the mind and the intelligence, and one becomes totally consumed by the influence of the modes. And as Prabhupada says in one lecture, that sometimes enmity between people, enmity between families lasts for how long? Generations. Generations. That is the influence of the modes in the conditioned state. But liberated person, who cares? So that's it. Huh.
Like sometimes it happens like, okay, let it go. Sometimes we partake that situation and we go ahead. But after later in some, it again pops out. Why that kind of situation
Now,
arises?
so why? Because the influence of the modes. So that means we are not on the liberated platform.
Then, then what should be the plan of action?
So that means initially when I neglected it, it was the it could be due to various other reasons. Mm. I neglect because okay, to keep my life peaceful, even though inside there is some dissatisfaction, but to keep my life peaceful or whatever may be the reason, one goes ahead. But that means the inner anger has not subsided. It's like a latent volcano.
But uh, in the practice of few devotional
But
service,
but but the point is we have to accept the fact that we cannot come to the liberated platform overnight. So therefore, all these things will happen. We have to continue the practice and get purity. That's all these things happen to all of us. We all go through these experiences. Nothing new about it. But yet, what can we do? What can we do? Yes. 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 Rather than bring it up again and then again getting agitated and this and so okay. It comes up again forget and go. Mm. Yes, yes, better. Yes. Provided one is on a platform. Mm. Of course, philosophically, one can try to do that. One should try. One should. Mm.
Then he got these kinds of words, and then he felt some agitation, little. But then in earlier case, we see that when he was attempted to kill, so there he was calm and still how
Mm.
to understand that. That was more severe.
Correct. So that is why it is said mental suffering is more than physical suffering.
And in case of Varadev, he
ए
also,
ये हो गया क्या?
yeah, हो गया.
हो गया ना?
Yes, yes,
पक्का?
yes, yes, right.
हाँ. So when he was going to be killed, it was a one stroke thing, correct? It was a one stroke thing. So he's going to be killed, finished, body finished. So he didn't care for the body. He didn't care for the body. So he was not on the body platform at all. But the words, the sarcastic words of Maharaj Rauguna, which which were in a series of verses, hmm, so then that is more pricking. And one more example is Vidura. So Vidura also again on the liberated platform. But still, third canto of the Bhagavatam, third canto, first chapter. When Duryodhana spoke the words, Karna Bhani, they were like what? Arrows going through the ears. The sharp words of Duryodhana. So that means what? He was affected. So insults affect the mind, correct? So that is much more severe. Again, Dhruva Maharaj example. Dhruva as a boy, he was insulted by words, words of Suruchi. And there Srila Prabhupada writes, the heart is like an earthen pot. Once it is broken, cannot be repaired. So that is why the words which affect the mind, they are much more piercing than even physical injury. So, so physical injury one may be able to tolerate, but mental injury is more severe. So that's the important point. And therefore, when Jad Bharat was going to be killed, well, he perfectly knew 100%. I'm not this body. He knew that. So he didn't. But then when it was insulting words, then little bit distant. और कुछ बोलना है? हाँ, so Varadev also, yes. So that's a beautiful purport actually. So Varadev also felt bad when Hiranyaksha was speaking all those abusive, insulting words. Even Varadev felt bad. Of course, as far as Varadev is concerned, there is no question of liberated platform or conditioned platform or any platform, right? Yeah, so he's always transcendental. But then that is due to compassion. So Lord is thinking, "अरे मेरा बच्चा क्या करे?" So that is out of compassion he feels bad. Oh, why this demoniac person. But still, the purport there, in the purport there, Srila Prabhupada focuses on the personal aspect of the Lord, that how the Lord is a person, and even the Lord feels when somebody speaks words like that. Then what to speak of a human being, even though he may be on the liberated. So, no. Hmm.
प्रभु ये रघुगुना महाराज ने जब बोले शब्द तो waves came into his mind, Jad Bharat, but he neglected them.
Hmm.
But अभी in practical life we see प्रभु like many people they say कि जो भी मेरे दिल में होता है वो मैं बोल देता हूँ
Hmm.
या फिर then they blame others also. You do not share your heart or
Hmm.
you are something from inside and you express something else.
So how to
Be
consolidate it, Prabhuji?
straightforward. Be straightforward.
Yes, Prabhuji, like that.
हाँ, तो आपको क्या लगता है क्या करना चाहिए?
मतलब अगर हर चीज जो चल रहा है प्रभु जी वो बोलने लग जाएंगे तो
हाँ, तो फिर रिएक्शन भी आएगा ना, तो वो स्वीकार करने के लिए तैयार बना.
लेकिन ऐसा भी होता है कि अगर नहीं बोलेंगे तो भी वो कभी ना कभी तो बाहर आते हैं
So that is what we were answering that question, Nimanita Prabhu. Similar question. So, so therefore, as an austerity in the conditioned state, because it is acting nicely, is acting perfectly, is not natural. But at the same time, if we say that ठीक है जो मन में आता है बोलो, now you do that in the community of Vaishnavas, what's going to happen? हाँ, फिर we commit offenses, we lose the grace. That's what will happen. So are we ready for that? No. So then somebody may say, as you're asking, that I'm feeling like speaking harshly. I'm controlling it and speaking sweetly. Is it not duplicitous behavior? Somebody may say that. As we just read, na, what the Lord is saying, Lord Narayan is telling. We just read. So even if the Vaishnava is speaking harsh words, how we should behave? With a sweet smile, try to pacify him. अभी हमारे वो natural तो नहीं है ना? Then what? Then we do it artificially. Then that is duplicitous. Then what to do? So therefore, the motive is what matters. So we are not simply trying to put an artificial show just so that people will say, "Oh, advanced Vaishnava." That is not our motive. What is our motive? Yes, to please the Vaishnavas, to please Guru and Krishna. That is our motive. If the motive is right, then it is a, it is simply an attempt as an austerity to behave properly, which the Lord expects. That is what is austerity of body, austerity of speech, austerity of mind. वो क्या है फिर? Austerity means what? It's not natural, right? Therefore, it is austerity. So Krishna is saying, Anudvega karam vakyam. Don't speak anything that is agitating to others. So one who's on the liberated platform, it is natural for it. But in the conditioned state, it's not natural. Then what? Then I have to do it as an austerity because the Lord will be pleased by going to the austerity. Then that's how I get purified and that's how I make progress. That's how the Lord will be pleased. So I'm doing it as an austerity, not simply to make a big show, but I'm doing it to please. The motive is what makes the difference. So if I'm doing it with the motive that I'll become famous, Arey, much first class tolerance. Uh-huh. So if it is done with the wrong motive, then there won't be much purification. Then that will be duplicitous behavior. Of course, something better than nothing. But you got the point? Mm. Yes. So one should definitely try. One should definitely try. Sometimes sadhaka means what? We try. Everything we are trying only, no? That is the meaning of sadhaka, practice. Everything is practice. We are trying to chant attentively. We're trying to hear attentively. We're trying to serve attentively. We're trying to be awake in the class. Everything we're trying. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not successful. But as long as one is trying, it is okay. Yesterday also we read, na? In the purport Prabhupada is writing. One must try to give up the offenses. You remember that? Yesterday. Prabhupada is not saying just give up. He's saying try to give up. Sadhana. Sadhana is practice. Everything is trying. When it becomes perfect, then there's no trying. Na? Then it's perfect. But sadhaka means trying. And trying means sometimes successful, sometimes not successful. But then we have to continue to try. ठीक है? हाँ बोल.
This case of Srivas Thakur,
Hmm.
when Mahatma's dancing and then Minister of Prabhupada was petting him to give aside.
हाँ हाँ. ठीक है. Harishchandra.
So, how to see that case?
What's the problem with that case?
Srivas Thakur slapped him. So, so in that case, if you see, like, means I say that Varahadeva did it for the compassion, whatever he's doing. You see that in that scenario or different?
Hey, why you bring Varadev now?
Means Narad Muni,
See, okay. In this case, when Srivas Thakur slapped Maharaj Pratap Rudra, his minister, so then how was he going to respond? He got angry, correct? He got angry and he was going to shout back at Srivas Thakur. He was going to shout back. He was going to say, Arey, see who's behind. It's not for me. It is for the king. He was going to say it. But then Maharaj Pratap Rudra, he said, you are so fortunate to have been slapped by a great devotee like Srivas Thakur. So the king could understand that getting the slap from the pure devotee like Srivas Thakur is a great benediction. So that was Maharaj Pratap Rudra's vision, spiritual vision. That was his purified platform. क्या प्रॉब्लम क्या? ठीक है. Okay. So therefore here Lord Brahma is telling Priyavrat that even if you are on the liberated platform, so you have to accept these things which come in life according to one's karma or according to one's previous actions. So one has to accept. But the difference is one who's on the liberated platform, he is not much affected by it. Just like Srila Prabhupada during his final pastimes, he was so sick, practically there was no flesh, only bones. The doctors who were treating him, they said if anybody else was in this situation, he would have been screaming in pain. But for Srila Prabhupada, what he was doing till his last breath, in perfect consciousness, he was translating. That's the difference. So, no ordinary person can do it. So that is the difference. So at the same time, because material body is there, then even Srila Prabhupada had to go through those effects of the material body, the effects of old age, disease. He had to go through all of that. Nobody escapes because material body is there. But then the difference is how one responds to that situation. That makes the difference. Everyone has to go through these situations, but the difference is in the response. So the more one is in the conditioned state, affected by the three gunas, then we can see the response. Mm. So we see in the outside world, we see mm, Some small accident, little bit paint goes off the vehicle, big fights. For small, small things, big fight. Right. Are so much affected by the modes. The modes just push the person, and as you were saying, so then the person he just becomes a servant of the modes. That's all. Modes affect the mind, and whatever the mind says, just do it. That is their slogan, and that is what happens. Mind says shout, shout. Mind says beat him, beat him. There's no second thought. And that is how it happens in the material. Okay, 17th verse. भयं प्रमत्तस्य वनेष्वपि स्यात् यतः स आस्ते सह सपत्नः जितेन्द्रियस्यात्मरतेर्बुधस्य गृहाश्रम किं नु करोत्यवध्यम्.
Translation. Even if he goes from forest to forest, one who is not self controlled must always fear material bondage because he is living with six covies, the mind and knowledge acquiring senses. Even householder life, however, cannot harm a self satisfied, learned man who is conquered his senses.
Yes. So if one is not self-controlled, or rather one is pramattasya, if one is pramattasya, that means he is mad, material. So then vaneshu api, even if he goes to one, but still what is the use? Hmm. Saaste saha shat sapatnaha. He's staying with his six co-wives. So whether he goes to forest or whether he's in city or wherever, his six co-wives are going to keep constantly pulling him, pulling, pushing. He becomes a slave. So what is the use? Hmm. But if one is jitendriyasya, if one is jitendriyasya, at, atmarate, atmarate, if one has conquered the mind and senses, self-satisfied, is buddhasya, then griha ashramaha, kim no karoti avadhyam. If one is self-controlled, self-satisfied, then even if one enters the grahastha ashram, what will be the loss? What harm will be there? As we were discussing this point yesterday. So Prabhupada writes in the purport, of course, he's beginning with quoting Narottam Das Thakur, Griheva Vaniti Kathaki Agavaranta. For one who has not controlled his senses, going to the forest to become a so called yogi is meaningless because his uncontrolled mind and senses are going with him. He cannot achieve anything even by giving up household life and staying in the forest. Hmm. Formerly, many mercantile men from the upcountry of India used to go to Bengal, and thus was a familiar saying, if you go to Bengal, your fortune will go with you. Our first concern, therefore, should be to control the senses. And since the senses cannot be controlled unless engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, our most important duty is to engage the senses in devotional service. So, if the mind and senses are controlled, then even if one is a grihastha, then there's no problem. And so, Prabhupada is quoting Yasya Haridasa, and then he's giving the example of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, we know that. And then he's quoting Prabhupada Saraswati, which Prabhupada quoted very often. Duddantendri kala sarpapatali protkata dhamshtrayate. So it is like venomous serpent whose poisonous fangs have been removed, then they're no longer fearful. Similarly, if the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, there's no need to fear their activities. The devotees in the Krishna consciousness movement move within this material world, but because their senses are fully engaged in the service of the Lord, they're always aloof from the material world. They're always living in a transcendental position. So the most important thing is to control the mind. 18. यषट्सपत्नान् विजिगीषमाणो गृहेषु निर्विश्य यतेत पूर्वम् अत्येति दुर्गाश्रित ऊर्जितारन् क्षिणेषु कामं विचरेत् विपश्.
One who is situated in household life and who systematically conquers his mind and five sense organ is like a king in his uh, fortress, fortress who conquer who conquers his powerful enemies. After one has been trained in household life and his lusty desire have decreased, he can move anywhere without danger.
Right. So you're saying that if one's mind and senses are controlled, then even though one may accept household life, but still there is no problem. He's like a king in his fortress. That means he's safe. So Prabhupada is talking about the Vedic system of four varnas and four ashramas is very scientific, and the entire purpose is to enable one to control the senses. That is the whole purpose. And towards the end, he says that the senses are considered very powerful enemies. As a king in a strong fortress can conquer powerful enemies, so household and grihastha ashram, household life can conquer the lusty desires of youth and be very secure when he takes one of responsibilities. 19. त्वं त्वब्जनाभाङ्घ्रिसरोजकोश दुर्गाश्रितो निर्जितशत्सपत्नः भुङ्क्ष्वेह भोगान् पुरुषादिदिष्टान् विमुक्तसङ्गः
Vimukta
प्रकृतिं
Prakritim
भजस्.
Bhajasva. Lord Brahma continued, My dear Priyavrata, seek shelter inside the opening in the lotus feet of the Lord, whose navel is also like a lotus. Thus, conquer the six organs, the mind and the knowledge acquiring senses. Accept material enjoyment because the Lord extraordinarily has ordered you to do this. You will thus always be liberated from the material association and be able to carry out the Lord's orders in your constitutional position.
So now Brahma is finally giving him the solution. He, so he has proved that it is the Lord's plan, the Lord's order that he take up the kingdom, rule the kingdom. But yet he is giving the solution. You can rule the kingdom and still not be affected. How? Tvam tva abja nabhangri saroja kosha durga ashritaha. Taking shelter inside the opening in the lotus of the feet of the Lord. So anyway, Prabhupada is explaining this analogy. After the Mamchaya Vicharana verse, Lord Brahma herein advises Priyavrat to remain transcendental in the fortress, not of family life, but of the lotus feet of the Lord. Abja Nabhangri Saroja. So the analogy is when a bumblebee enters the opening of a lotus flower and drinks its honey, it is fully protected by the petals of the lotus. So the bumblebee enters the opening inside the lotus. From the opening, it goes inside. And when it goes inside, it's fully protected by the petals of the lotus. So similarly, the Lord's lotus feet are also like lotus. And so one who takes shelter within the petals of the lotus, within the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet, then he is totally protected. The bee is undisturbed by sunshine and other external influences. Similarly, one who always seeks shelter at the lotus feet of the personality of God, it is protected from all dangers. We already discussed this point yesterday. Dangers may be there, but the devotee, what is the point we discussed yesterday? Somebody remembers? The dangers may be there, but what does it mean under the shade? Spiritual master's instruction, okay. Why is unaffected? Yes, because he knows that by going through these difficulties, yeah, that is the point. The Lord will be pleased. I'm going through difficulties, but the Lord will be pleased. That is the consciousness. So, because he is ready to go through those difficulties with the higher principle in mind, Lord will be pleased. Okay, I'm having some difficulties. Okay, doesn't matter. I'll go through them. Lord will be pleased. And because he's giving pleasure to the Lord, ultimately he also feels pleased. He also feels satisfied. So that is how the devotee is able to go on. So then he's quoting Samashritaye Padapalaplam. And then further down he says, our actual duty is to carry out the supreme order of the personality of Godhead If we are fixed in our determination to carry out the supreme order of the Lord, we are always secure, regardless of where we are situated, whether in hell or in heaven. The important point is determination to carry out the supreme order of the Lord. Then we are secure. Therefore, Lord Brahma advised Priyavrat, be situated in your original position as an eternal servant of the Lord. If you carry out His orders, you will never fall even in the midst of material enjoyments. Material enjoyment achieved by dint of one's fruitive activities differs from material enjoyment given by the Supreme Personality of God. A devotee sometimes appears to be in a very opulent position, but he accepts that position to follow the orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee is never affected by material influences. The devotees in the Krishna conscious movement are preaching all over the world in accordance with the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They have to meet many karmis, but with the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are unaffected by material influences. He has blessed them, as described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. कबो न बाधिवे तुम्हारा विषय तरंग पुनरपि यही थानी पाबे मोर संग. Who said this to whom? Yes. A sincere devotee who engages in the service of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, preaching his cult all over the world, will never be affected by Vishaya Taranga, material influences. On the contrary, in due course of time, he will return to the shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and will thus have perpetual association. Okay. So the important point is one should be determined to take shelter, to follow the instructions. If one is sincerely doing that, then one will not be affected by the Vishaya Karma. Somehow we have missed this point in upper fourth. In the morning, Jano Dipru, you were asking the question, right? That mm, even though he wanted him to take the kingdom, he could have done that without getting married, right? And Prabhupada writes that in a purport, but somehow we missed it. Where? No, what he here, here. Okay, maybe it's coming in the future. Maybe. No, no, um, mm, mm. So, so both the things are there. So on one hand, as long as the bee is sucking the honey, he's he gets protection from the petals of the lotus. मतलब आगे आ रहा है ना? Hmm. So, so yes. So that point is also there. But as the honeybee continues to drink the honey, then he is so intoxicated by the honey that he forgets to leave the lotus. But as long as he is within the lotus, then he's also getting protection. So that aspect is taken over here. See, every analogy has certain limitations. So one has to take only that much part of the analogy which is applicable in the context. So, so in this context, yes, he's getting protection. That much part you have to take. ठीक है आगे 20 पढ़ो ट्रांसलेट
Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued. After that, being fully instructed by Lord Brahma, he is the spiritual master of the three worlds. Priyavata, his own position being inferior, offered obeisances, accepted the order, and carried it out with great respect.
yes subahumanam sabahumanam with great respect he carried out. There was no grudge here. It's not that inside he was grudging. Arey, yeah, there's no, with great respect. Okay, read the purport.
Sri Priyavata was the grandson of Lord Brahma. Therefore, according to social etiquette, his position was inferior. It is the duty of the inferior to carry out the order of the superior with a great respect. Priyavata therefore immediately said, "Yes, sir, I shall carry out your order." Priyavata is described as a Mahabhagavat, a great devotee. The duty of a great devotee is to carry out the order of the spiritual master or the spiritual master of the spiritual master in the Parampara system. As described in the Bhagavad Gita 4.2, Evam Parampara Praptam. One has to receive the instruction of the Supreme Lord through the disciplic chain of spiritual master. A devotee of the Lord always considers himself a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord.
Okay, so anybody remembers the reference? Yes, sir. Ah, Swayambhu Manoyan. Okay, open 324:13. Read. So who's saying this?
Swayambhu. Yes, oh, sorry. Or
Swayambhu Manu too?
Brahmaji.
Huh? Swayambhu Manu to Brahma?
Mhm.
देखो तो देखो थोड़ा पीछे जाओ.
Lord Brahma said, my dear Brahmaji को ही कह रहे हैं but turning and serving नहीं कर रहे पर ये second
हाँ आप क्या बोल रहे? Kardamuni is telling Brahma. Yes, that's correct. Kardamuni is telling Brahma. Hmm.
sons ought to render service to their father according to the teaching. One should obey the command of his father or spiritual master with due deference, saying, yes,
Purport.
purpose. Two words in this verse are very important. One word is Pitri and another word is Guru. The son or disciple should accept the words of his spiritual master and father without hesitation. Whatever the father and the spiritual master order should be taken without argument. Yes, there should be no incident in which disciple or the son says, "This is not correct. I cannot carry it out." When he says that, he is fallen. The father and the spiritual master are on the same platform because the spiritual master is the second father. The higher classes are called Bija, twice born. Whenever there is a question of birth, there must be a father. The first birth is made possible by the actual father, and the second birth is made possible by the spiritual master. Sometimes the father and the spiritual master may be the same person, same men, and sometimes they are different men. In any case, The order of the father or the order of the spiritual master must be carried out without hesitation, with an immediate yes. There should be no argument. That is real service to the father or to the spiritual master. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has stated that the order of the spiritual master is the life and soul of the disciple. As a man cannot separate his life from his birth, a disciple cannot separate the order of the spiritual master from his life. If a disciple follows the instructions of the spiritual master in that way, he is sure to become perfect. This is confirmed in the Upanishads. The import of Vedic instructions is revealed automatically only to one who has intrinsic faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead and in his spiritual master. One may be materially considered an illiterate man, but if he has faith in the spiritual master as well as in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then the meaning of the scripture's revelation is immediately manifested before him.
Yes, so this is Brahmaji speaking to Kardamuni. So he is pleased with Kardamuni accepting his instructions. So this is Brahma, and even the previous verse is very nice. So Brahma is speaking to Kardamuni. Okay. So here also, so Priyavrat, he immediately accepted the instructions, saying, yes, sir, no arguments. Absolutely no. And regarding Das and Udas, we have famous verse. Which one? That is that verse, Bhagavatam verse. Aham, Hari Tava Padekamulam Dasanudaso Bhavidasmi. Who's telling this? Vritaraj. Then you can read that also. So there also in the purport Srila Prabhupada writes, this verse gives the sum and substance of devotional. Okay, we're going ahead. Text 21, please read. अरे पीछे 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 जाने दो ना.
Lord Brahma was then worshipped by Manu, who respectfully satisfied him as well as he could. Priyavrat and Narad also looked upon Brahma with no tinges of resentment. Having engaged in Priyavrat in accepting his father's request, Lord Brahma returned to his abode, Satyalok, which is indescribable by the endeavor of mundane mind or words.
So here in this verse, purport Srila Prabhupada writes in the first paragraph, both Priyavrat and Narad were exalted personalities who knew how to respect Lord Brahma. Therefore, instead of looking upon Brahma with resentment, they very feelingly offered him their respects. Okay, so Priyavrat had no grudges, no resentment. Narad Muni also had no resentment. So everyone was satisfied. Brahmaji has given instruction. Also, an important point to note is that when instructions are given, especially serious subject matters like this, some very serious instructions are given. The instruction should always be given or should be backed up with proper philosophical explanation. You find the same thing Brahmaji does at another place when Brahma also gives yes, yes. So they're also a very difficult decision. Prithu Maharaj is performing all these very difficult yajnas, and then Brahmaji is coming and saying, stop, stop. So it's not a very small thing to just stop. So much of expenditure, so much of energy. But then again, Brahma he gives some philosophical explanation why he should stop. So therefore, there are quite a few places uh, where Srila Prabhupada writes the statement. So the context is two instances. One is when King Uttanapad makes Dhruva Maharaj the king, and the same thing when Dhruva Maharaj makes his son the king. So in both the cases, they consulted with the ministers and other citizens before putting this person on the throne. So there Srila Prabhupada writes, so in the Vedic times, the king, the ruler was not an autocrat. He was not an autocrat. You know what's an autocrat, right? My way, and nobody should say anything. Whatever I say is perfect. So that's autocrats. The Prabhupada were not autocrats. So they consulted. They consulted ministers, other citizens. They consulted. Even though they had full authority, they were kings, monarchs, emperors, they had full authority. Even if they would do it, nobody would question them. But still, they didn't act like that. They consulted. Important point to note. Mm. So sometimes we think we are even greater than more than that. No, that's not the good way of functioning. So,
So sometimes when we consult, it it is it is said that don't consult too many people, otherwise you will get confused.
yes, not too many people, appropriate people. Mm. Not any Tom, Dick, and consult the right people. ठीक है 22 पढ़ो.
Swayambhuva Manu, with the assistance of Lord Brahma, thus fulfilled his desires. With the permission of the great sage Narada, he delivered to his son the governmental responsibility for maintaining and protecting all the planets of the universe. He thus achieved relief from the most dangerous, poisonous portion of material desires.
Mm. So Swayambhu got his job done. Mm. So as Prabhupada writes, Swayambhu was practically hopeless because such a great personality as Narada was instructing his son Priyavrat not to accept household life. I was very pleased that Lord Brahma had interfered by inducing his son to accept the responsibility for ruling the government of the universe. Okay, then Prabhupada is talking about Maharaj Ikshvaku. Okay, and then he's talking about how this is Dhara Mandal, the entire planets, you know, for maintaining and protecting all the planetary systems. Okay, so he was in charge of the entire universe, you can just imagine. And probably it's talking about modern day situation, how at present politicians are very eager to take charge of the government. Uh, so that time, Priyavrat Manu had to be forced to take, and now they're too eager to take charge of the government and engage their men in canvassing from door to door to get votes to win the post of president or similar exalted post. On the contrary, however, herein we find that King Priyavrat had to be persuaded by Lord Brahma to accept the post of emperor of the entire universe. Similarly, his father Swayambhu Manu felt relieved to entrust the universal government to Priyavrat. Now, so Swayambhu Manu also was not attached, nor was Priyavrat attached. Ultimately, they're simply doing their service. They're not attached to the posts and positions. Very important lesson to learn. Huh? There's no attachment to the posts and positions. Nobody wants to take posts and positions. Huh? Somehow they are doing it as a service. Hmm. So, thus it is evident that the kings and executive heads of governments in the Vedic age never accepted their positions for sense enjoyment. Such exalted kings who were known as Rajarishis ruled only to maintain and protect the kingdom for the welfare of the citizens. The history of Priyavrat and Swayambhu Manu describes how exemplary, responsible monarchs perform the duties of government with disinterest, keeping themselves always aloof from the contamination of material attachment. So they were not attached, they did it simply as a service. Mhm. So at the last paragraph of the purport, the word Surarshi Vara Anumatena is also significant. Manu entrusted the government to his son with the permission of the great Saint Narada. This is particularly mentioned because although Narad wanted Priyavrat to become free from all material affairs, when Priyavrat took charge of the universe by the request of Lord Brahma and Manu, Narada was also very pleased. Okay. So before handing over the government to Priyavrat, then Manu took permission of Narad Muni. Because Narad was like a spiritual master, he was guiding Priyavrat. So he took his permission. Then. So you see, all these points are very important. You see how these great people are functioning, the etiquettes they are following, and how they are functioning. Mhm. Okay, 23.
Following the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrat fully engaged in worldly affairs. Yet, he always thought of the lotus feet of the Lord, which are the cause of liberation from all material attachment. Although Priyavrat Maharaj was completely freed from all material contamination, he ruled the material world just to honor the orders of his superiors.
Okay, read the first part.
The words Mana Vardhano Mahatam, just to show honor to the superiors, are very significant. Although Maharaj Priyavrat was already a liberated person and had no attraction for material things, he engaged himself fully in governmental affairs just to show respect to Lord Brahma. Arjuna had also acted in the same way. Arjuna had no desire to participate in political affairs or the fighting at Kurukshetra, but when ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he executed those duties very nicely. One who always thinks of the lotus feet of the Lord is certainly above all the contamination of the material world.
Okay, so that's the important point. Although Maharaj Priyavrat was already a liberated person and had no attraction for material things, he engaged himself just to show respect to Lord Brahma. And then he's also given the example of Arjuna. He was ordered to do so by the Supreme Lord. He executed those duties very nicely. But from all these examples, we see that how a devotee is not hankering for pose, positions, prestige. That is never the quality of a devotee. Mhm. So now that one is hankering and fighting and pulling and pushing and doing all these funny things for pose and position. These are not the symptoms of a devotee. We should be clear about this. Mhm. So on the contrary, here we can see somebody has to be forced. Please take this post position. Mhm. So that is devotee. So devotee is not eager for this simply for one's own sense enjoyment. So somebody is offered that, then he takes it up as a service. That's all, without any attachment for any sense enjoyment. So that should be the quality of a devotee. Mhm. That is what we have to learn from these great personalities. So just to show respect to the superior. Again, further down, Prabhupada writes that Maharaj Priyavrat therefore was a liberated person and was among the highest of yogis. Yet superficially he became the emperor of the universe in accordance with the order of Lord Brahma. Superficially he became the emperor of the universe, just in accordance with the order. Showing respect to his superior in this way was another of his extraordinary qualifications. So he accepted that post just to show respect to the instruction of Brahma. And then he's quoting Narayana Parasara. A devotee who is actually advanced is not afraid of anything, provided he has the opportunity to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of God. This is the proper explanation of why Priyavrat engaged in worldly affairs, although he was a liberated person. Also, only because of this principle does a Mahabhagavat, who has nothing to do with the material world, come down to the second platform of devotional service to preach the glories of the Lord all over the world. As Srila Prabhupada also said, we are preaching only for one reason. What is that? Yes, order of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. यारे देखो तारे कहो कृष्ण उपदेश आमार आज्ञा guru hoy tare. So because it is agnya, because it is order, therefore we are preaching. We are not preaching simply to gain followers. That is not the purpose. We are not preaching because we have the power to deliver so many hundreds of people. Why? We can't purify our own self. What will purify? So that is not the reason. The main reason is instruction. Because it is instruction, therefore we are doing this. And then Mahaprabhu will deliver them. That is only he can do it. What we have no capacity. We simply do our duty. Repeat the words. That's all what we have to do. Why fighting? How?
Preaching,
What is the fighting?
fighting that this is my area, my followers, and I have to preach. If that is happening, that means the motive is not the order.
Prabhupada
It's
called the United Nations Bhau Department.
the underlying principle is not as order. I have to serve the order of Srila Prabhupada or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but if fighting is happening, that means there is a
Material contamination. It's very clear.
making followers, and yeah, one has to understand. If I'm fighting, then I'm not properly motivated.
Let not be. Of course, things can be sorted out in a proper, nice Vaishnava way. Things can be sorted. But unfortunately, we see that uh, quite a few occasions we see the person himself he does not preach, nor does he allow others to preach. Why?
Domination,
My area. What do you call? What mentality you call it?
Lord of your service, the Lord of all your service.
Uh, all of you are very decent. He knows the reality. Doggish mentality. Doggish mentality. My area. As soon as another dog comes, bhoo! What's the problem? Huh? Okay, then sit down and discuss. What's the problem? Anyway, you are not doing anything. If you are doing something substantial, okay. But you are also not doing anything. Somebody is trying to do something and spread Mahaprabhu's mission. What is your problem? Huh? What is, give one logical reason. You don't want to get into too many details of this.
But
Anyway,
even one
see,
more,
everyone has to, as we were discussing, so many classes we have discussed, everyone has to sincerely check his own consciousness. That's all. Yes, intention, consciousness. Everyone has to do it. So, who can interfere in the free will of a jiva? Even Krishna does not. So, but Shastra is very clear, and everyone knows. In one sense, everyone knows what is right, what is wrong. But the material attachments just cover a person, blind a person. Philosophy, everyone knows. Everyone speaks also. But then the material attachments, Rajogun, Tamogun, just cover a person. And then is pushed. Rajogun pushes the person to act in certain ways. So these are not Vaishnava ways of acting and behaving. So if we act in these ways, then it's same doggish mentality. There's nothing different. It's the same doggish. So there must be cooperation. That is the meaning of cooperation that Srila Prabhupada spoken. Cooperation means okay. Yeah, I'm not able to do. Okay, you come. Okay, if you have your own ways of doing plan, okay, let us sit together, work it out. That is the way of doing things. So,
person to do congregational preaching or handling the property of the temple, you come and sit on that in that position. I have blessings for you. So then, how much the blessings of the senior person will save the person who is sitting on the post?
See, uh, as Prabhupada is explaining in his purports here, a devotee who is actually advanced is not afraid of anything, provided he has the opportunity to execute the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, if one is following instructions, so instructions are not only instructions regarding service, there are also instructions regarding sadhana. So, if one is, so okay, fine. If superiors are giving a service, then we can accept that as coming from the Supreme Lord Himself in parampara. No problem. And definitely the blessings will be there as long as one is also following all the other instructions which the Supreme Lord is coming through the acharyas. So, as we have discussed many times, the spiritual protection comes from following the instructions. So, if one is following all the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, then one gets the spiritual strength. It is not about one person. It is not about a person. We are connected to the Supreme Lord through parampara. No individual person has any capacity to give any individual blessings. Everything is coming from top. Therefore, connection should be very firm. And of course, we discussed this point yesterday also, that no blind following. So we find something which is, so we discussed this point yesterday also. So here the situation is slightly different. This is Brahma, who is definitely a transparent via medium and who's definitely presenting the plan of the Supreme Lord as it is. So there's no doubt about it. So, but in contemporary times, in the current day situation, we may not have that same transparency. And so therefore, one can always consult other senior Vaishnavas. And if there are some doubts, one can always clarify. There's no need of blind following. So the spiritual protection comes by following the instructions of the acharyas. That is always the principle. Hmm. Hmm.
Given the post and they are, as a service they are doing it.
Hmm.
But when we see that we are Prabhupada mentioned this and we are following Srila Prabhupada, on the other side, we ourselves are attached to post. We want to hold the post. Then how we are representing this philosophy? People will see very hypocrisy is there. How you are preaching this Krishna consciousness? If we are fighting for post or holding a post or not giving up, so very difficult then to present. um, a lot of chaos is there because of
So yes, so everyone has to rise above all these petty material conditions if you want to preach more effectively. Otherwise, it's true. If we are acting on a very low platform, then people are going to definitely point out faults. So, if we want our preaching to be more effective, then definitely we have to come to the proper standard. At least make the sincere effort to come to the proper standard. At least that. Krishna. Okay, let's go ahead. Now we're going to go fast. Now all the good instructions are finished. Mm. Read Baba.
Thereafter, Maharaj Priyavat married
Hmm.
Mahismati, the daughter of Prajapati named Vishwakarma. In, in her, he begot 10 sons equal to him in beauty, character, magnanimity, and other qualities. He also begot a daughter, the youngest of all, named Ujjaswati.
So here Prabhupada writes, since Maharaj Priyavrata was fully trained in transcendental knowledge, he could have returned home and conducted the business of government as a brahmachari. Uh, Instead, however, when he returned to household life, he accepted a wife also. The principle is that when one becomes a grihastha, he must live perfectly in that order, which means he must live peacefully with a wife and children. So one cannot, so therefore, Srila Prabhupada spoke about bachelor daddies. So therefore, the system is one has to accept an ashram, any of the ashrams, and follow all the rules and regulations of that ashram. So if one accepts brahmacharya ashram, then one should follow all the rules and regulations of brahmacharya ashram. If one accepts grihastha ashram, then one has to follow all the rules and regulations. So one cannot be somewhere in between. Mhm. So therefore, so if one is ruling a kingdom, no, that means Raja. Raja means there has to be Rani. Mhm. Not possible otherwise. So one has to follow. So therefore, he's given the example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. First wife died, mother requested to marry for second time. Yeah. So mm, behind every successful man, there's a woman.
Is the exception.
So yes, Prabhupada does explain this. Prabhupada says that the grihastha man, so when so he works hard throughout the day, when he comes back home, his wife speaks in pleasing words, satisfies his senses. So that is required for the man. That's required for the grihastha. So therefore, that's correct. So therefore, if one accepts all these governmental responsibilities and material responsibilities, so then one should be a proper grihastha, get married. So one has to do all these things. Mm. Mm.
We see that in many cases, person is not appropriately balanced or not able to suit with any of the ashrams, maybe a grihastha or brahmachari. So in that case, what should be his, approach? Means
His approach should be to follow what the Shastras say.
it doesn't matter whether whatever, even if he may be between, but if he's properly regulated for trying to follow the activities according to the spiritual master, then still he is considered to be advanced. Maybe it's not in any ashram, but there are many devotees that I have seen.
Oh, many do it.
So in a sense, some exemplary whom I find they are not in any ashram, but they come regularly every day in the morning program, everything following the principles and carrying on
Anyway,
devotion.
without getting into too many details, ultimately one has to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. So if he's following the instructions of the spiritual master, then it's okay. Further down in Srila Prabhupada writes, sometimes we are criticized because although I'm a sannyasi, I have taken part in the marriage ceremonies of my disciples. It must be explained, however, that since we have started a Krishna conscious society and since the human society must also have ideal marriages, to correctly establish an ideal society, we must take part in marrying some of its members, although we have taken to the path of renunciation. Mhm. Of course, Srila Prabhupada did this basically in the early stages of the movement. The first marriage took place between Yes, Janki and Mukunda. And again, very exemplary. We have to learn from Prabhupada actually. Did Prabhupada tell them to get married? Ah, they were already living together. So, hmm? Hmm. Hmm. Yes, that is correct. So, Srila Prabhupada never gave them instructions to get married. But in his lectures, he would always speak about the four varnas and the four ashramas. And so, there is no question of boys and girls living together without marriage. So, he would speak these things. So, simply by hearing, then after their initiation, first initiation, that Srila Prabhupada performed. Then after that, so they themselves were thinking, oh, Swamiji always speaks about getting married and not living lives. So that is what inspired them. And then they went and asked Srila Prabhupada, should we get married? And Srila Prabhupada said, yes. And then Srila Prabhupada himself agreed to perform the marriage ceremony. And they did not know anything about marriage. They only saw Western marriages. Now this is Vedic marriage. They have never seen or heard what a Vedic marriage is. So they even asked Srila Prabhupada, what clothes are we supposed to wear? What color of sari? Srila Prabhupada specifically told a red colored sari. And then Mukunda asked, so what should I wear? And Prabhupada said, white colored clothes. So Prabhupada told them everything regarding what to wear and jewelry and this and that. Everything Srila Prabhupada had to teach them. And yes, yes, and he personally cooked the feast also. Mm. So why Srila Prabhupada did this? Because as Prabhupada is writing here, directly in a Bhagavatam purport, Srila Prabhupada is writing this. Mhm. So this may be astonishing to persons who are not very interested in establishing Deva Varnashram, the transcendental system of four social orders and four spiritual orders. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to re-establish Deva Varnashram. In Deva Varnashram, there cannot be acknowledgement of social status according to birthright, because in Bhagavad Gita it said that determining considerations of guna and karma. It is this Daivavan ashram that should be established all over the world to continue a perfect society for Krishna consciousness. This may be astonishing to foolish critics, but is one of the functions of a Krishna conscious society. So when we talk of Varnashram, then it includes everything. Four Varnas, four ashramas, everything. So that's the beginning. So one thing is to establish the various ashramas. So that's what Srila Prabhupada tried. Okay, continue please.
Three among these
Hey, three, pehle 10, 25th verse, 25th verse.
the ten son, the 10 sons of Maharaj Priyavrata were named Agnidhar, Idam Jivaha, Idmajih, Yagyabhu, Mahabir, Hiranyared, Grit Pristha, Swan, Medha Tithi, Vitihotra and Kavi. These are also names of Agni, the fire god.
आगे पढ़ो आप ही पढ़ो
Three among these 10, namely Kavi, Mahavir, and Saman, lived in complete celibacy, thus trained in brahmachari life from the beginning of childhood. They were very conversant with the highest perfection, known as the Paramhamsa Asana.
Hmm. So these three out of those 10, these three remained as brahmacharis. Prabhupada talks about Urdhva Reta, one who can completely control sex life, is able to work wonderfully with his brain, especially in remembering. The students who simply hear Vedic instructions once from the teacher could remember them verbatim without needing to read books, which therefore did not exist in former times. Mhm. Okay, आगे पढ़ो.
Translation.
Translate.
As situated in the renounced order from the beginning of their life, all three of them completely controlled the activities of their senses and thus became great saints. They concentrated their minds always upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the resting place of the totality of living entities, and who is therefore celebrated as Vasudeva. Lord Vasudeva is the only shelter of those who are actually afraid of material existence. By constantly thinking of his lotus feet, these three sons of Maharaj Privat became advanced in pure devotional service. By the paucity of their devotional service, they could directly perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as the Super Soul, and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and him.
Okay, so these three brahmacharis, they became like Paramahamsas, basically Paramahamsa stage. Ah, yes, actually is also is correct, and the other meaning is to serve the lotus feet. Both are there. Shil Prabhupada, you can hear Prabhupada in quite a few lectures. Prabhupada says, you come to the temple, you have darshan of the deities, and Vrindavan Prabhupada is saying. So you can see the nice, beautiful lotus feet of Krishna Balaram. So if you regularly have darshan, then you can remember these lotus feet. So literally also one can remember the lotus feet again. And it also means serving the lotus feet. Okay, next, 28. Hey, wo पीछे 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 28
In this,
in
in
his.
his other wife, Maharaj Priyavrata begot three sons named Uttama, Tamasa, and Revat. All of them later took charge of Manvantar millennium.
And this we read before. This is third, fourth, and fifth Manvantaras. Okay, next, 29.
After Kavi Mahavira and Savana were completely trained in Paramahansa stage of life, Maharaj Priyavrata ruled the universe for 11 arbudas of years.
In the word to word meaning, Prabhupada explains what is one arbura. You can see that. One equal. How, how much is that?
100 million.
Yes, 100 million. Yes. And like that, 11. 11 arburas. Okay, read.
Whenever he was determined to fix his arrow upon his bowstring with his two powerful arms, all opponents of the regulative principle of religious life would flee from his presence in fear of unparalleled prowess he displayed in ruling the universe. He greatly loved his wife Barhismati, and with the increase of the days, their exchange of nuptial love also increased. By her feminine behavior as she dressed herself, walked, got up, smiled, laughed, and glanced about, King Barhismati increased his energy. Thus, although he was a great soul, he appeared lost in the feminine conduct of his wife. He behaved with her just like an ordinary man, but actually he was a great soul.
So he got a little bit carried away there. Ah, Akshapra, we were asking this question, na? Now you got the answer here. See the second paragraph. To maintain such a life of strict vigilance, one needs encouragement from his wife. In the Varnashram dharma system, certain classes such as Brahmanas and Sannyasis do not need encouragement from the opposite sex. Kshatriyas and Grihasthas, however, actually need the encouragement of their wives in order to execute their duties. Indeed, a Grihastha or Kshatriya cannot properly execute his responsibilities without the association of his wife. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally admitted that a Grihastha must live with a wife. So Grihastha, Griha means there has to be greening. So then only it is complete. And then there must also be children. Prabhupada calls it Putra Shunyam, Griha Shunyam. So, so all that is required. Then only it is proper Grihastha ashram. So therefore, he says Kshatriyas were even allowed to have many wives to encourage them in discharging the duties of government. The association of a good wife is necessary in a life of karma and political affairs. Actually, Srila Prabhupada didn't leave anything actually in his purpose. Whatever question one has, you'll find the answer. And only Prabhupada has given such purports. Previous acharyas, they don't, there was no need and they didn't bother to give all these. But Prabhupada, everything is given. To execute his duties properly, therefore, Maharaj Prevar took advantage of his good wife, Varishmati, who was always very expert in pleasing her great husband by properly dressing herself, smiling, and exhibiting a feminine body features. Queen Varishmati always kept Maharaj Prevar very encouraged, and thus he executed his governmental duty very properly. In this verse, Eva has twice been used to indicate that Maharaj Prevar acted exactly like a henpecked husband, and therefore seemed to have lost his sense of human responsibility. Actually, however, he was fully conscious of his position as spirit soul, although he seemingly behaved like an acquiescent karmi husband. So he behaved like that, but basically he was still a Mahabhagavad. And in this way, he'll live for this, rule the universe for 1100 seconds. Okay, go ahead, 30.
While so excellently ruling the universe, King Priyavrat once became dissatisfied with the circumambulation of the most powerful sun god. Encircling Sumeru hill on his chariot, the sun god illuminates all the surrounding planetary systems. However, when the sun is on the northern side of the hill, the south receives less light, and when the sun is on the south, the north receives less. King Priyavrat disliked this situation, therefore decided to make daylight in the part of the universe where there was night. He followed the orbit of the sun god on a brilliant chariot and thus fulfilled his desire. He could perform such wonderful activities because of the power he had achieved by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
The power he had achieved by worshipping the Supreme Personality. So what? So Priyavrat is competing with Sun God. Huh? So why is he doing this? When is if at night if there is sun, it is a problem or it's not a problem? Not a problem. How will one will sleep if sun is there? Huh? So what type of sun is this? So anyways, before that, Prabhupada writes in the first paragraph, devotional service is so powerful. When a devotee achieves what he wants to accomplish, it is not by his own mystic power, but by the grace of the master of mystic power, Lord Krishna. By his grace, a devotee can accomplish wonderful things unimaginable to the most powerful scientists. Okay, so that point we have already discussed right in the beginning of our class today about depending on the grace. Now, in the last paragraph, Prabhupada is explaining about the special son of Maharaj Priyavrat. Read the last paragraph.
So Maharaj Priyavrat devised a very powerful chariot as brilliant as the sun. He had no desire to compete with the sun god. For a Vaishnava, never wants to supersede another Vaishnava. His purpose was to give abundant benefits in material existence. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti remarks that on the 11th of April and May, the rays of Maharaj Priyavrat's brilliant sun were as pleasing as rays of moon. In October, November, both morning and evening, the sun provided more warmth than the sunshine. In short, Maharaj Priyavrat was extremely powerful and his actions extended his power in all directions.
Okay, so that was the service he wanted to render with this second sun. So the second sun was meant to give heat in winter and coolness in summer. So that was the purpose of the second sun. It was simply as a service, not to compete with the original sun. Sun. Okay, fine. Read 31.
When Priyavrata drove in chariot behind the sun, the rims of his chariot wheels created impressions that later became seven oceans, dividing the planetary system known as Bahumandal into seven islands.
Bhumandal.
Bhuman-
Okay, so that's how. So he had this chariot with which he followed behind the sun, and that created impressions which became seven oceans, the and then the various planetary systems or the various islands, locus. No, no, no. So this is explained now. In the next verse is explained. So this will be studied at the end of the fifth canto. Hmm. Agapadu 32. Okay, we'll just read Vishwanath Thakur's commentary on 31. Then again, starting from the winter. Okay, sorry. The movement of the wheel of his chariot produced troughs. Troughs means depressions, which became seven oceans. This means that he had seven chariots, each with one wheel. How can a chariot go with one wheel? By the power of his yoga. Their movement was higher than the sun's, and they circled around the plane of the earth. Jiva Goswami says in the Sandarbha that one should understand that chariots were successively larger and larger in size since the outer circles were larger and larger. Some say that he made larger and larger chariots in succession, each one twice the size of the previous one, traveling higher and higher so that inhabitants of a city in Aryavarta could see the chariot even at a great distance. Because the wheels of each chariot were broader than the previous ones, the oceans were successively broader. As we'll study, each ocean is bigger than the previous one. He rode in each of these seven chariots for 25 days and 45 and a half ghatikas each, totaling half a year, starting with summer equinox, with the sun gradually descending until Pausha month. Okay, anyways. So that was how he had these chariots, and that's how they were creating these depressions. Okay, आगे पढ़ो 32.
The names the names of the islands are Jambu, Paksha,
Shalmali,
Salmali, Kosha,
Kusha, Krauncha, Shaka,
Sakam.
and Pushkara.
Each island is twice as large as the one preceding it, and each is surrounded by a liquid substance, right, which is the next island.
Hmm. Okay. Next, continue.
The ocean in each planetary system has a different
Yeah,
type.
no, no, no. Next verse.
The seven oceans respectively contain salt water, sugarcane juice, liquid
Liquor,
clarified
Baba.
clarified butter, milk, emulsified
You don't
yogurt,
like liquor.
and sweet drinking water. All the islands are completely surrounded by these oceans, and each ocean is equal in breadth to the island it surrounds. Maharaja Priyavrata, the husband of Queen Varismati, gave sovereignty over these islands to his respective sons, namely Agnidhara, Hidmachuha,
Yajnabahu,
Yajnabahu,
Hiranyareta,
Dhritarashtra,
Dhritarashtra, Medakiti,
Medakiti.
and Vidya.
Thus they all became kings by the order of their father.
Ah. Okay, pass the mic. Next. 34.
34. King Priyadad then gave his daughter Urjvati in marriage to Shukracharya, who begot in her a daughter named Devyan.
So there's a connection here. Priyavrat, Shukracharya, Devi. Okay.
My dear king, a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust from the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the six material whips, namely hunger, thirst, lamentation, illusion, old age, and death, and can conquer the mind and five senses. However, this is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord. because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the four castes, in other words, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name of the Lord even once. Okay. So, where are we? 36. Okay. So basically, Shukdev Goswami is saying that this is nothing very great for a pure devotee because a pure devotee has taken shelter of the Supreme Lord. So then he can do all these wonderful things because he takes shelter of the holy name, and then by taking shelter of the holy name, even once, then he rises above all these bodily designations. So in the purport, Prabhupada is writing, Shukdev Goswami reassured him, my dear king, he said, don't be doubtful about the wonderful activities of Priyavrata. For a devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything is possible because the Lord is also known as Urukrama. And then Prabhupada explained Urukrama, Vamandev. And then in the next paragraph, since the Supreme Lord is all powerful, he can do things that seem wonderful for a common man. Similarly, a devotee who has taken shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord can also do wonderful things unimaginable to a common man by the grace of the dust of the lotus feet. And of course, Srila Prabhupada is the best example for it. And then Prabhupada is talking about the effects of the holy name, and then how by chanting the holy name, even a Chandala can become a Brahmana. Okay. Okay, go ahead. 36. Now read the translation. There are about 5 verses more. Just read the remaining translation.
While enjoying his material opulences with full strength and influence, Maharaj Priyavrata once began to consider that although he had fully surrendered to the great saint Narada and was actually on the path of Krishna consciousness, he had somehow become again entangled in material activity. Thus, his mind now became restless, and he began to speak in a spirit of renunciation.
Okay, so he understood that he got a bit carried away in his material affairs. And so then, but once again, he realized that. So Prabhupada is talking about this verse, Tyaktva Sudhamam Channambujamare. And then Prabhupada says, if one falls down, therefore, his progress might be checked for a certain time, but he will again become manifest at opportune moments. So although Priyavrat Maharaj was serving according to the instructions of Narad Muni meant for going back home back to Godhead, he returned to material affairs at the request of his father. In due course of time, however, his consciousness for serving Krishna reawakened by the grace of his spiritual master Narad. So even though he got a little distracted in between, but once again, because he had followed Narad Muni's instruction, now once again by the grace of Narad Muni, he once again came on track. And then he's quoting this Shuchanam Srimatam Ge. And then he says the words Devarishi Charana Nu Shayana indicate that Maharaj Priyavrat, having fully surrendered to the great sage Devarshi Narada, was strictly following all the devotional processes and regulative principles under his direction. In regard to strictly following the regulative principles, Srila Vishwanath Thakur says, Dandvat Pranama Stan Anupatita. By immediately offering obeisance with Dandavat unto the spiritual master and by strictly following his direction, the student becomes advanced. Maharaj Prabhu is doing all these things regularly. As long as one is in the material world, he has to be under the influence of the modes of material nature. This is what we were discussing. As long as one is in the material world, one has to be under the influence of the modes. It is not that Maharaj Priyavrat was freed from material influence because he possessed all material opulences. Material opulences, material body means 3 modes. The influence of 3 modes is going to be there. So, in this material world, both the very poor man and the very rich man are under material influences. For both wealth and poverty are creations of modes. Okay, so therefore the influence was there. So, even though he was a Mahabhagavat liberated soul, correct? We read that. Even before, he was a liberated soul. But now, once again, he came under the influence of the modes. But now, again, Because he had practiced devotional service by the grace of Narad Muni, once again he realized his mistake and then he repents. Next verse.
The king thus began criticizing himself. Alas, how condemned I have become because of my sense gratification. I have now fallen into material enjoyment, which is exactly like a covered well. I have I have had enough. I am not going to enjoy anymore. Just see how I have become like a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. Because of this I am condemned.
So, as Prabhupada writes, Maharaj Prevat acted very wonderfully in the material field of activities, but because he was dealing in sense gratification, ruling his kingdom and dancing to the indications of his beautiful wife, he personally condemned himself. Hmm. And then Prabhupada says, when we think about this example of Maharaj Prevat, we can just consider how degraded is the modern civilization of materialistic advancement. If Maharaj Prevrat could condemn himself in spite of his wonderful activities, how condemned we are in our so-called advancement of material civilization. We can conclude that such advancement has nothing to do with the problems of the living entity entangled with this material world. And then further down he says, Maharaj Prevrat had served the great sage Narad sincerely. Therefore, even though he had accepted material opulences, he could not be deviated from his own task. He again became Krishna. And then he's quoting Nyapikram Nashas. Such renunciation as Maharaj Prevrat is possible only by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all this is happening by the grace of the Supreme Lord and Narad Muni. So even though he got a little bit distracted, but by the grace of the Supreme Lord and Narad Muni, then once again he came back on track. Generally, when people are powerful or when they have a beautiful wife, beautiful home, material popularity, they become more and more entangled. Privrat Maharaj, however, having been completely trained by the great sage Narad, revived his Krishna consciousness in spite of all impediments. Prabhupada is repeating that point. Training by Narad Muni, grace of Narad Muni. So therefore, that is very much required. Even for those who want to enter Grihastha ashram, therefore that training is very important. So then if something similar happens in the Grihastha ashram, one gets a little off track. But if the proper training is there, then they can come back on track easily. So therefore, everyone has to go through the training initially. Whether one wants to continue as brahmachari or whether one wants to be a grihastha, for everyone the training is important. Then one will become Krishna conscious, which is the ultimate goal. Okay, 38.
By the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Maharaj Priyavrat reawakened to his senses. He divided all his earthly possessions among his obedient sons. He gave up everything, including his wife, with whom he had enjoyed so much sense gratification in his great and opulent kingdom, and he completely renounced all attachment. His heart, having been cleansed, became a place of pastime for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, he was able to return to the path of Krishna consciousness, spiritual life, and resume the position he had attained by the grace of the great saint Narada.
Yes. So in his heart, there was pastimes of the Supreme Lord going on. Prabhupada writes that our hearts are meant for the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Does anyone remember where Prabhupada writes this similar point somewhere else? In the Chatushloki Bhagavatam, second canto, 9th chapter, text 35, which is talking about Prema Bhakti. So there Srila Prabhupada writes that how for the pure devotee, in the television of his heart, the pastimes of the Supreme Lord are constantly. So they are also seeing television. But on their television, there are pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And so this means that one should be fully Krishna conscious, think of Krishna, Manmanabha, that should be your only business. And towards the end of the purport, for one who desires to advance in spiritual life, attachment to material opulence and attachment to beautiful wife are two great impediments. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide, which was, yes, Nishkamshanasya Bhagavad Bhagavan. Such attachments are condemned even more than suicide. Therefore, anyone desiring to cross beyond material nations must, by the grace of Krishna, be freed from attachment to women and money. When Maharaj Priyavrat became completely free from these attachments, he he could again peacefully follow the principles instructed by the great saint Narada. Okay, go ahead.
39. There are many famous verses regarding Maharaj Priyavrata's activities.
पढ़ो
Purport
अरे purport कहाँ translation
40.
No one but the Supreme Personality of Godhead could do what Maharaj Priyavrata has done. Maharaj Priyavrata dissipated the darkness of night, and with the rims of his great chariots, he excavated 7 oceans. Okay, 40.
To stop the quarreling among different peoples, Maharaj Priyavrata marked boundaries at rivers and at the edges of mountains and forests so that no one would trespass upon another's property.
Hmm. Yes, boundaries are required. Hmm. Okay, आगे पढ़ो.
As a great follower and devotee of the sage Narada, Maharaj Priyavrata considered hellish the opulences he had achieved by dint of fruitive activities and mystic power, whether in the lower or heavenly planetary systems or in human society.
Thus, in the Bhaktam purpose to the fifth canto, first chapter, Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Activities of Maharaj Priyavrata. श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की संवेद गौर भक्तवृंद की जय थैंक यू वेरी मच हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे आप ही माँ करो वही लोग हैं ना हरे कृष्णा okay so we'll meet tomorrow we'll read the second chapter which is very interesting